Thank you, Yasmine Kabongo, for joining me today, all the way from Canada, which you just told me off air. It was still slightly warm, maybe the last day of it for you as you started heading into the cold, wintry winter. And as I said to you, here in the Cape, we are hopefully seeing the last of the cold days as we head into our beautiful summer of your former home. Yes. So, Yasmine, just a little introduction to you is that you are originally born in Congo, and then you were brought up in South Africa. And we're going to get into your career and how you launched into your legal career, mainly in Johannesburg, from what I can see, before making a move to Ontario, Canada. And how you've moved and the certain moves you've made. But you're currently, I believe, the Associate Regional Counsel for EMEA for Boart Longyear. Is that correct? Excellent, excellent. Well, look, you and I first came into contact probably what feels like yesterday, but is actually almost 2 years ago, when you kindly took part in our 5 in 5 series, which was really designed to try to communicate to lawyers across Africa and elsewhere what was happening at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I suppose, and how, certainly for counsel like yourself, how it might have changed. And what I thought was particularly interesting, obviously, was that you were able to give a very general view, but you're in a unique position as someone who's made the move to North America, which not a lot of our listeners and readers have done, but I know that nearly 100% of them would love to. So perhaps you can give us some insight into that later on. But your insights into 5 in 5 were particularly interesting to me because you mentioned the difficulty, or the initial difficulty, in balancing work and family from home. And without being too personal, do you have kids, and is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, exactly that, because like you just said, thank you first of all for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to exchange with you, Rob. And this is definitely another one of those where I'm like, oh, I'm so touched. Thinking of me as an influential lawyer in the region, that is something amazing. So thank you again. If I have to just delve into it, but yeah, so I'm a mother of 2 young kids, and we had literally just moved to Canada, to Ontario, when the lockdown happened, when COVID first hit. We moved in 2019, mid 2019. I started working here in May, and I think already in December, there were the first few cases of COVID. I mean, in Canada, we were speaking COVID already that December. And by April, the kids were basically sent home, and we were working from home. The kids were home, and we had to balance and literally juggle between having kids in the same space, trying to follow their educators or their teachers, the program, and me sitting next to them on Zoom calls for work. That was the biggest challenge. I mean, it's a new country. You barely know anybody, so you can't get the help you would necessarily get if you were back home, and maybe drop them off at parents or a friend, or just work it out, or have somebody helping you, looking after the kids while you're at work. But we literally had to do it all in the same space, in the same room. And the lockdowns were crazy this side, to say the least, because they were stricter. I guess when I compare to like South Africa and other parts of the world, like even DRC, I can compare to DRC or even Ghana, places where I do business in, or where I work in. I was speaking to my counterparts on the other side of the world, and they were still going to the office at the time. There wasn't a lot of pressure or a lot of fear around COVID as we were feeling on this end. So we had to try juggle having kids at home, having I'm working from home. My partner, he's in construction at the time. He was still going to work on site. So I was left with two kids, basically homeschooling them and trying to cover my own work. So that was a nightmare. It was a big challenge, and it still is because it's since 2000, April 2000, the kids only went back to school about 2 weeks ago. And we're not even sure if they'll be in school. Yeah. So they've only gone back to school. Yeah. So it's been a difficult year and a bit. Yeah.
That is quite exceptional because I mean, as you know, I'm here in South Africa, and I've got to say, like yourself and many millions around the world, we also had that initial lockdown, but kids being sent home, and that finding that balance between becoming a teacher, trying to follow the path that's been set out for them by the different, well, my son and my daughter are at different schools, you know, and at relatively tricky ages. I mean, I think when the lockdown first happened, they were 8 and 6. So you know that's difficult to, you know. I mean, it's not difficult from a it's, it's not difficult from a how the homework itself wasn't difficult, but but actually getting them to focus and try to concentrate on your own work. And, you know, in positions like yourself, you know, senior positions and myself, you know, where you're having to make strategic decisions and you're having to call clients and, you know, and yeah, it was very difficult. But where I was going with that was that it was actually a saving grace when they were allowed to go back to school. And if you've only just had it 2 weeks ago, my heart goes out to you because that is,
Yeah.
it was the only time I could get any
they
work
were
done.
in and out. Sorry, say that
I
again.
said it was the only time I could get any work done was when they were not there.
Exactly.
Oh wow, you've really had to, and a new country, a new company, new role, new responsibilities, new life, no friends, effectively. We know. I mean, I've
Yeah,
moved around myself.
basically,
I know how
yeah,
difficult it can
basically.
be.
But let me just go back
Yeah, please do.
on the. So it was basically it hasn't been a new role per se, or a new company because I was actually appointed, or I mean, I started with the company from South Africa in 2018. Yeah,
Okay,
started in
okay.
2018 with the company. And it's just so happened that when I got the job, we were thinking as a family, we were planning to relocate anyway. So it's just the job fell at a good time. It came at a good time when we were about to relocate. And it just so happened that the business had an office in the same city I was planning to move. So I think all the stars just fell in line, and then it was just so easy to make that move. I mean,
That's
being
amazing.
appointed in South Africa to do the work for the Umbiie region, and then having a few months down the line, just going basically to my bosses at the time and they telling them, I'm actually planning to move to relocate. Is there a possibility, an option for me to keep my job, but in a different country? I mean, a different continent altogether, a different
Yeah.
region, because we do have businesses in the Americas, and we do have legal counsel that are based out here doing work for that region. But I guess I was just, I was lucky. Some will say I was blessed to have been given the opportunity to keep my job, servicing the EMEA region, but moving to a whole different continent within the business. So, yeah.
That's excellent. I mean, the stars, like you say, were aligned. But also, you know, I'm a great believer in your hard work prior to that puts you in the situation where you can take those opportunities. So let's not, that we can't put it all into the stars and say, I think your hard work and your bravery and your moves, you know, subsequently and the things that you've done and have put you there to take advantage. I'm really pleased for you. So you and your husband and the kids had decided we're going anyway, and then it all just sort of fell into line. That's amazing.
All just fell in line. So it was a good opportunity, and yeah, here we are.
And you're still, you say you're doing it for the Umbiie region, and you mentioned you work with counterparts in the DRC and Ghana in particular, and South Africa, I guess. Are you still doing a bit of work
Yes, in
here?
South Africa.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, it's a very extensive reach in Africa and Europe and the Middle East as well.
Mm.
I mean, countries in Africa include Senegal, Ivory Coast, Mali, the DRC, Gabon. In Europe, there's Geneva, Switzerland. There's a bit in the UK. There's a bit in Poland, in Germany. So it's a very extensive reach. I mean, the business itself is a global company,
Yeah.
a leading in the industry, in the drilling services, very known. So we've got a footprint all over, basically, all over the globe, and in I guess the biggest countries in the different regions. And we're both in the manufacturing as well as in the drilling services itself. So we manufacture products, we sell products as well as having the mining work, the drilling work as well. So it's very extensive. So the reach is very extensive.
Keeps you
Yeah.
incredibly busy. I think, out of interest, I mean, obviously we've spent, all of us as professionals have spent the last 18 to 24 months, finding our feet and pivoting the business and moving around and changing and having to adapt accordingly. None more so than the lawyers who've had to do that internally and for their client base as well. But have you found we're obviously not out of the COVID woods yet. That's not. I'm not being blasé on that front. I know that there's other waves coming and other variants. But it does feel like we as businesses are starting to handle the madness a little bit better, as it were, and maybe start preparing accordingly. Have you seen a more interest or an uptick in work at all in Africa for given your position as counsel? Is there more interest in Africa? Is there more going on at the moment, post-pandemic or than there was before?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think in Africa, business did stay relatively stable, surprisingly enough. When the pandemic first started, I don't think it was expected, but the train of business, I think, has been really sustained, has been sustainable, especially in our sector, very sustainable. There hasn't really been a moment where it felt like, oh, there's a crisis going on and people are going to be losing jobs or the likes. And I really feel like at this moment, business is picking up again, going it's going back to I won't call it the norm, but people are finding themselves, they're finding their feet, and we're able to carry on, and we're able to proceed, to pick up and just carry on from where we left off. Right now, I really feel that business has really picked up. I feel like I'm as busy as I was pre COVID or pre-pandemic. I mean, there was a moment of confusion and where people didn't know what was going on at first. Between I would say between April to about June when it first started, when all the countries were putting in the restrictions, the various lockdowns. There was that period of uncertainty, but I think now it's moving ahead. We're moving.
I wonder if you found this as well. It'd be interesting to know from your position as counsel. I wondered if you found that, like a lot of our clients have, that the first part of the pandemic, so most of last year, was really looking internally, as in what do we, right, first of all, it was like, we've got to send everybody home. How do we, from a legal perspective, what can we expect people to do? Where have we got people? Which countries are doing what? You're very much looking. Then it started to progress and making sure that everyone's safe and well. Then you've got to start putting in procedures and policies, as dictated by the countries that you're operating in, or the governments of the countries that you're operating in, and especially from huge global firms like yours, especially if you manufacture something. You know, some of it might be on a boat halfway through, and the docks might have closed. And I'm not being flippant. These things actually happened. And you look at the staff, and you look at everything like that. And then I think the feeling I get, and I'd like to get your point on it, was that this year, slowly but surely, businesses are starting to look externally again, and they're starting to look at get out there and do the deals, and feeling not so much confident, but like, okay, we've got this madness now, we can handle it. Would that be, would you say you've flipped from internal thinking to external? Is that why it's gone busy?
I really feel that that's the direction. I mean, at first it really started not panic, but trying to figure out how to look out for ourselves, or to look after our people. But now it's more like, okay, we are navigating a boat. Yes, we're going into the unknown. We don't know what's ahead. We don't know what wave is going to meet us. But I think we're more open because a lot of the businesses have all put in their kind of policies, or their or there's some form of structure going out in a lot of the companies. So it's easier now going out, because you're certain that even your customers or your clients or the people you work with have already put something in place. So there are policies in place. Governments are taking care of certain issues. So there's a lot more stability. So it's easier now. I feel it's easier to go out. It's easier to do business. It's easier to even travel. Some people are traveling now. There's a comfort. I mean, when you're working in such an extensive area, or where you've got footprints in different areas, there's a need to travel. I mean, pre-COVID, we were always on the run, always from one country to the next, meeting with council, meeting with internal clients, going around. But it all stopped. It all stopped during the pandemic. But I think now people are more open and happier to go out, and companies are lifting up all the restrictions that they put in on travel, maybe internally. So it's opening up now. So we're back to business, and we're back to doing what we were doing pre-COVID, I guess.
From a business perspective, it's great to hear that things are, that in other parts of the world are picking up. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about you, if I may, because I don't know too much about your history, but I know that briefly, born in the Congo, moved to South Africa. How old were you when you moved to South Africa?
Oh boy, I was very young. I think I was 4. I was 4 years
Okay.
old. So my parents immigrated when I was very young. So I had the privilege of doing school in South Africa, and primary school all the way to university,
In
and
Johannesburg,
studying
is
law
it?
at, yes, in
In
Johannesburg.
Johannesburg.
Yes, I studied law at Wits, Witwatersrand, the
Mm.
best university out there.
I
No
hear.
adverts, but yeah.
I hear. Mm.
Yeah, so that's where I was lucky enough to do my studies, and I started my legal journey in South Africa as well, in Joburg. Did my articles there, and yeah, and then like I said, I found myself here in 2019,
Yeah.
working in Canada, and I'm currently actually preparing or converting my degree to be a recognized or an admitted attorney here in Canada. So I'm also doing the process. So eventually, I will be admitted in both South Africa and in Canada,
That's wonderful.
and hopefully in the near future, even in the DRC. That's one of my goals, to also go back and get admitted there. So yeah, that's basically a brief history and a little bit about, I mean, how I got to where I am.
Well, look,
So
I
yeah.
mean, I'm not going to stop short here. You will be very, very much an inspiration to many of our listeners and the people who read our reports and the people who follow us online, and those that we engage with. You are, part of how do I put this? A new breed of lawyer from Africa that's paving the way and building career internationally as well, but still obviously lovely for you that you've still got a touch of home with your work that you're doing as well, but also getting that international exposure. You've basically, Yasmine, got the job that about 1 million people that I speak to really want. And it would be great. I mean, I know personally from a family perspective and from a professional perspective, I know what I know the bravery that you and your husband have shown by moving to Canada. You know, brand new country. Don't know if you've ever been there before, but maybe you had. But you know, yeah, I did the same when I moved to Hong Kong. We'd never been there, and we just went and make it happen.
It's the best, right?
Yeah, and you
It's
work,
the best. You just go and you just discover.
go and work hard, and just really work hard, and you make it work. But so you and your family have been very brave, but you're making it work, which is great. But you know, in terms of getting the opportunity to work for Boart Longyear, is that something that, I mean, sorry, well, I'm going around about the houses here, but you obviously had a vision that you and your husband thought, well, we're gonna move and we're gonna explore the world. The job came about. Did that come around quite? You know, was it hard to get? Was it a referral? Did you find it online just by chance and apply, or how did it go? How did that happen?
Oh, that's wow. So, when a friend of mine who's a recruiter sent me the specs, I think it was 6 months before I actually got employed there here. She sent me the specs. I looked at it. I was like, no, not my thing. Not right now. I tried to pass it on to another friend. I passed it on to another friend, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I forgot about it. Just went, and the recruiter, the friend, came back to me and she said, it didn't work with the person that you had referred. Don't you just want to send through your CV? You know, you never know. Just try it out. And I was like, okay, I'll send out my CV, but I'm not. I don't think it's the right moment and the right time. And also because I knew I was moving, so you know, it was just one of those where it's like, ugh, I'm moving in the next year or so. I'm not really looking at something. Let me stay where I'm at, you know, and you know, ended up the end, you know, when it's time to go and what. But when I sent through my CV, forgot about it, I got a call, I think 2 months later, and they asked me, are you still interested? And I said, well, let's go for it. Let's try it out. Tried it out, and actually, when I started researching the company, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted to do. What was I thinking passing over the opportunity when it came? Because I had always wanted to go into the mineral resources, energy sector. You know, that's something that I had been aiming for. Like when I finished my articles, and when I was doing my articles, I was working for a firm that specialized largely in infrastructure and energy, the energy sector, a bit of mining. So I really fell in love with the mining work, and I had the intention of eventually going into it. And I had said to myself that I was going to do my master's in either the minerals or the infrastructure. So when I looked up the company and what it does and where the footprint and where it's based, and I was so excited about the offer, so excited about the opportunity that when the opportunity was finally handed, I took it, I grabbed it. I grabbed it, knowing very well that there was a possibility that I would have to move within. I think at that time I thought, oh, I still have another year or so. So let me give it a try. I'll push it up for a year. Learn as much as I can, and to be a good reference, you know, on my CV, so for when I move. And lo and behold, less than a year with the company, we were asked to move. We moved on a permanent residence. So the permanent residency came out, and there's always a deadline with these things. So we had to move at the time. So we were given a date, and we had to move at the time. So I guess it's the good work in the short space of time that my bosses at the time were convinced that we could make it work, even being a continents, not even a continent, but continents and hours away from where the work was based. They truly believed that I could do it. So here I am.
Well, and obviously, and the one thing, I mean, maybe we're not quite ready to take positives out of the COVID pandemic yet, but if we are, from a work perspective, one thing that I've seen, and you probably as well, and maybe you and I are two professionals that are testimony to this, is the fact that if you are good enough and your processes are good enough, you can do them from anywhere in the world. You can, you know, like I say, I loathe to take positives yet, but if you're good enough, you can do it. And you know, I have a lot of clients in Asia, and I think when I first moved to Africa, there was a fear that I wouldn't be able to service them properly, and I wouldn't know the market, and I would lose touch with it from their side. And I work very hard not to. But again, you know, that half of them don't know where I am in the world. You know, and you know, so and that's a good thing.
And also with the way things are, also thanks to the pandemic, I guess, we've become we've become so global that you can literally sit anywhere in the world and still render services to someone, I don't know, out. I could be in Canada servicing someone out in Tahiti. You know, I could be
Yeah.
sitting in Bora Bora servicing someone out in Mexico. It makes no difference. I mean, with platforms like Zoom, platforms like Teams, um, they've connected. We are able to connect. It's easy to connect. You just need to be mindful, obviously, of the time zones. Make it work. I mean, there are times where you have to give up your sleep to be on a call at 6 in the morning, so that
Well, you're a mother, so you're used to that, surely. I was going to say, as a dad, I know I never sleep.
yeah. So there are times where you just have to give up your sleep for a few hours, or maybe work just an extra hour later because you just have to make it work. You know, make it work around the schedule. And with the pandemic, everyone was at home anyways, so it wasn't. I mean, there's the pros and cons of working from home, because sometimes you don't know when the day starts and when the day ends, because you're constantly on calls, but you just make it work. And with the pandemic, it's really did show that we were able to do it. You're able to do it from any parts of the world, from anywhere in the world. You can render the services. You can work across globes, I guess, across the globe, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you, I mean, obviously, from what I could see on LinkedIn, you know, your career is says to me to date that you've been brave, you've taken chances, you've not been afraid to move to get a better option and learn something new. Is that how you see your career at the moment, where you've, you know, certainly from when you did your articles, was it a Dalmini, was it, is that what you,
Dlamini,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
Dlamini.
yeah,
Did articles at Dlamini.
yeah.
I have moved. I mean, I did my articles at Dlamini, and then I stayed on as an associate, and and then after I think 5 6 years, I said, you know what, I'm bored. I want something new, and at the time I had a growing family as well. That's when I had my kids. After the 6 years, I said, you know what, I can actually start my own practice,
Hmm.
and just work around my family's schedule instead of trying. It is very difficult. Anyone who works in practice, well, with kids, I just applaud them. I don't know how they do it, because if you're in practice and you've got two young kids, it's, I don't know. I couldn't imagine doing it in practice with the kids. So I decided to go on my own and to start something new. And um, and again, there were a lot of opportunities. Doors opened up. It wasn't easy at first. And at the time, I decided that I would work from home. So I took space in my home, and created my little office. And every time I had to meet clients, this was out in Joburg. Every time I'd meet clients, I'd meet them at a Mug and Bean
Oh.
restaurant. So there was a Mug and Bean very close to me. And that was my place. And the waiters knew.
Yeah,
They
brilliant.
knew me, because that's where I had all my meetings, in the Mag and Bean. And then I'd go home and work through it. When the kids are sleeping, the kids are in daycare or being looked after by the lady who would help me. So that's how I did it. And whilst working, whilst there, I had another opportunity come up. I had one of my clients who had just started up his business, and he wanted me to help him set up his HR practice and basically put everything, basically build it up and put everything in place. And then I jumped ship. I took it on, and I took it on as a consultant. So I was with him, I think, for 3 or 4 months, working as a consultant, setting up shop and getting his teams ready for the HRA, and putting the employment structures together, the agreements and the likes. And just when I had finished that, I got another opportunity to work in the IT sector, and there I was legal counsel for some time before I moved over to Botlonge. So I have been jumping a lot, and it's
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily jumping. It's more like you've taken opportunities as they've presented
yeah,
themselves, and you've not been scared. You've been brave, and you've said, "No, you know what? I can do this. I'm going to do that." And I think it's very admirable.
I think the stretch is always good
Mm.
because you go into it, and it's something that I learned from the time I was doing articles. I remember starting articles at Lamini because it was a medium sized firm, a boutique firm, growing at the time. I didn't have the luxury that some of my friends had going into a big firm, like the big brands, the big names, where they had the assistant, they had a whole team structure where there's a senior partner, there's an associate, there's working on the projects. Literally, I got in as a candidate attorney and I had to swim from the deep end. I was thrown into the deep end. I was sent to court on my own. I was sent to court on my own. I was sent to do things half of the time I was lost. I remember being sent to the Pretoria High Court. First time on my own. I had no idea what I was doing. And my principal told me, you will go and file this document. You will uplift this file as well. And I need copies of this document. Copies. And I'm like, I've never seen these. I mean, I've seen it in school when it was all in lecture, in lecture format, but I've never actually done this. So I was sent to do this on my own. And I remember getting to the Pretoria court. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I called the office. And one of the associates told me, just go to the clerk, be really friendly, explain to the clerk that it's your first time and they will help you. And that's what I
Nice,
did.
good advice.
That's what I did. And because of such experiences, where I'd find myself in places where I didn't know what to do with nobody on my own, having to swim, um, I've never been afraid to jump into something new. I've never been afraid to try something new. I might not know it all, but I'm like, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna read all that I can. When I started, even at Port Longyear, I had never worked within the Ohad region. Now I had to deal with the Ohad region. I was given the Ohad region, and the Ohad region is so complex. It's very complex. I mean, just from filing the annuals, you have to have certain formats of how you prepare your board meetings and stuff. I'd never done the company secretarial work, but I took a textbook. I took the OHADA uniform laws and I just started reading. I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to start reading. I started reading, started reading, and I've made my local councils my best friends. Basically,
Brilliant.
every time I have a new local council, I tell them, you're my best friend in this country. When I'm lost in this country, I call you. So uh, that's just how I do it. Jump into it and read and find your best friend and go for it.
Oh, honestly, I'm going to send this to the universities that we work with here, because we do these talks for universities, the law schools here in South Africa. This year we've done Rhodes, UWC, Stellenbosch, and one other. I can't remember who. Oh no, we had UCT lined up, but they sadly had that fire that they had to contend with a few months ago. So that's to come. But they are always you. Yeah, you might not get off the phone for about a month. I think there would be so many students asking you that, but that's such a powerful message to take away that that you just take it on. It sounds to me like you're the type of person that faces challenges head on and just is brave and goes, you know what, I'm going to learn, I'm going to read, I'm going to get there, and I'm going to do it. And you clearly have made things happen. And I think it's certainly very, very inspirational. It's nice to see, you yeah. And even with the move to Canada, you and your husband have decided that's where we want to go. So you go and make it work. It's fantastic.
You
It
make it
really is.
work. You make it work. You make it work. I know this. I think I saw this on social media somewhere. It said, "Fake it until
You make
you
it.
make it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
I've
that's
been
the
there. Yeah,
motto. Yeah, but
it's kind of
yeah,
like, okay, we're gonna go through, and then suddenly one day you go, oh, I know how to do that now.
you wake up and you're like, I know this. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh wow, I did that. Okay, I know this. So I know this. It does get scary at sometimes it does get scary. You're worried and you're like, oh. am I doing this right? And am I at the right place? And are people seeing through me? But when you get the emails, the thank yous or the wow, you did a great job there, then you're like, okay,
Okay.
it's happening. You're doing it. It's okay. You're doing it. You've got this.
I got the. I think you will probably be able to, you know, have had similar experiences to me in terms of certainly from your experience of working in different jurisdictions in different countries, and I think back to some of the things that I've done in my career, you know, and having been lucky enough to recruit in over 40 countries, we and have lived in many of them as well, or certainly visited. Where I've done it really well is where I've remembered that I'm very good at what I do, but I've tried to understand how my clients in that country would like me to do my job, or the job at hand. And you listening to you there, where you were talking about making the local council your best friend, and you're clearly remembering that you're very good. You're a very good lawyer, but let's learn how to do it there. And the mistakes I've made in the past, which I have, and I'll hold my hand up, is when I've gone into countries and I've forgotten to do that bit. I've just kind of gone in and gone, I can do this, and then you don't know why it's not working. It's like, well, it's because you haven't. Remember, Rob. Remember, and then oh yes, let's get it like that. And yeah, and you know, I think South Africa's gone very well for me since moving here. But then I've approached it in that way, and I think, and it sounds like Canada is going well for you as well. In terms of we touched on a little bit in terms of the fact that the work is coming back. Do you? And apart from the sort of the obvious technical changes in terms of the way that you communicate with some of your counsel and some of your internal clients and some of the things you have to deal with, is there anything that you've seen that's changed a lot during the pandemic from your job perspective, from a legal perspective? Is there anything that, or even things that you think, oh, okay, this is gonna change in the future?
Especially in I would say in my sector, like the EMEA region. Previously, a lot of my councils were not really tech savvy. It was almost always impossible to have a Zoom meeting because they just never knew how to use it. But now I feel that more of the meetings are there. We are a lot comfortable using technology for our meetings. We're a lot more comfortable working virtually in that region specifically. It's easier. They're finding their feet. I feel that they've invested a lot also in having stable internet connections, stable telephone lines, which previously was very difficult. You'd have to basically schedule meetings in country in person and then fly down for a day or two in some of the countries to meet up with counsel to have a good discussions, to have a good review of the files or to go through the matters. But now I can easily sit down with local counsel for an hour on Zoom and go through all my files and get a good meeting out of it. But when I first started, I remember it was very difficult to get counsel to schedule even a meeting at 10 and say we'll chat on Zoom at 10, but at 10 they were still struggling to download the app, then you'd have to call and be like, okay, fine. I'm in and out of meetings. I just wanted to basically tell you that I'll be in country and can we meet, next week, but it was always a mission to schedule a meeting. And even if you did get to schedule it, there were always a delay because of the lack of technology or the infrastructure in specifically in the African region. But in other regions, what I would say the change has been, I think a lot of the lawyers are using platforms that is giving them exposure. When I say platform, I mean like working through I won't say a middleman, but working through a company, a referral on a referral basis, where there are companies out here I would give a name like Advanced Law, that has a pool of legal attorneys, and you just send an email basically to the companies. Yeah, I've got a matter in the Netherlands, and I need a lawyer who specializes what in recoveries or whatever, and they have a pool of lawyers, and they will just put you in touch with them. And I think a lot of the lawyers in Europe, in the Americas, um, are using a lot of these services or going onto these platforms. So that's very good, because it's easier now to get expert knowledge, to get specialized lawyers without having to go knocking different doors. I've seen that a lot. And another positive that I've seen is that a lot of the big firms, international or global companies, firms, are having webinars, and these are free webinars, speaking on various subjects, and it's been very interesting because we've been able to connect with a lot of them just through the platforms. Um, there's been a lot of webinars. I'm attending webinars at least once a week or once every second week. Different firms are putting up webinars. Different forums are setting these up with the law firms, and it's actually giving the law firms exposure. Now I've got a list of attorneys where I'm like, okay, I've been to this webinar. They specialize in X, Y, and Z in this country and in that country. So it's really has opened up a lot. And I like that they're free as well.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for these things, because previously we'd have to pay to attend seminars and conferences. And sometimes you'd pay so much money and attend something that you didn't enjoy, or you didn't even find what you were looking for, or what you thought you would get out of it, you didn't get in the end. But now we have all these free webinars on Zoom and all these different platforms, and I think we're going in the right direction. In that sense, I really feel like this change, or this particular change, is really a positive change, and it's going to help so many people. It's going to expose the firm. It's going to help companies make good decision and connect with the right people.
And you haven't had fatigue from too many webinars yet, then? I know.
No, actually, I've been enjoying them,
That's good.
and what I appreciate is the fact that they actually send you the uh, the videos or the recording
That's
after
good.
the webinar, so you can still go back and and brush up a little bit if you missed anything. So I've really been enjoying the webinars.
That's it. It's actually very useful to be sent the recordings, isn't it? Because there is always something that you forgot to write down, or something you missed, and then but that's really good to hear. Yeah, I'm at pains to. I keep referring to Africa as if it's one country, and obviously it's not. It's 54 different countries, with their own challenges. And any of my clients that are out there that are listening to this, they must remember that if they are entering into the African continent, they've got to remember that don't make the same mistake as many of my clients did in Asia, and thinking Asia was one big country. They're not. There's lots and lots of challenges. But what you have in certain parts of Africa, and I was talking to a general counsel about this the other day, is that in many, what is wonderful, you take countries like South Africa and Kenya, for instance, that are wonderfully advanced, and in terms of the uptake in usage of mobile, for instance, people are very used to making mobile payments. From the moment that mobiles were invented, many African populations and nations were uptake of that. So that, and then you saw that with the COVID, there was a very quick move, not so much in South Africa, but certainly in Kenya, to online court decisions and online courts. Fantastic, the speed at which they move. But then you've also got to remember that in certain countries in Africa, you mentioned DRC earlier, obviously where you may get admitted in the future. There are issues with electricity. There's issues with Wi-Fi isn't as always generally available. So you have your business challenges. You have your business challenges, and I think maybe, I don't know what you feel, but I think maybe COVID really sort of showed where those challenges to business are still. I mean, or maybe it's shone a magnifying glass on them.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned South Africa as well, where things are, it's tech savvy, the mobile and everything. But a place like South Africa, I've actually struggled even with filing of documents, because everyone's just at home, and we haven't been able to file documents in certain offices like the master's office and whatever. So you haven't been able to do a lot of the work. Everything's just been pending. Although you would feel like South Africa should have been prepared, but then in countries like the DRC, already you have issues. Even before the pandemic, you just had issues.
Yeah.
It's always an issue of a lost file. It's an issue of we can't get access to information, access to documentation. There's uncertainty within the law. So with the pandemic, like you say, it's really been magnified. The problems has really been exposed, because at some stage we couldn't do anything. I couldn't file anything. I couldn't get any information because it's the pandemic. There's restrictions. There's lockdowns. It's not easy to pull out legislation from off websites, not even government websites. You don't have the legislation.
They
Sometimes you
don't,
don't even
there's
have
nothing on there
the
sometimes. Yeah.
governmental website. Exactly. Sometimes it's a website that's under construction, so you don't know what's going on. I mean, they've been making a lot of changes within the mining sector, the subcontractor sector in the DRC, but it's been all unclear. So there's a law that's been passed, but we're not sure at this stage whether it's in effect or whether it's still pending, or whether there's still issues to the law, because issues have been raised, but nobody seems to understand what's going on. And the only way to actually find out what's going on is me or somebody flying in country, going to the office, walking into the office and getting the information. So simple things that should just be readily available, we just don't have. And that's the problem now, that with their own offices being closed as well, it's even hard to get the information. Even if you were to just walk into the offices, they'd probably tell you that they're working on skeletal staff, or it's a reduced staff, so you can't get the information. You'll have to come back. But like you say, it really has magnified the issues that we have within our continent.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of new infrastructure required within our continent.
Absolutely, and it sounds like you and I are very kindred spirits when it comes to bravery and making moves and things like that. And it's going to take a lot of that and a lot of hard work to and a lot of people like you and I to get through those challenges. I think, every country on the African continent does have that, and I think, and I think maybe sometimes there's companies like your company that get it and been in the continent for a very long time and have understood and can ride the waves and the challenges and understand it. But there's new entrants that are coming into the African continent that really don't understand the fact that, and they may take things for granted. They may take, I'll give you a prime example. I was hosting a webinar online, obviously on Zoom the other day, kindly been asked by a bunch of lawyers from Australia and New Zealand and South Africa to host and compare the webinar. And in the middle of it, we had load shedding. So the host froze. And I had to, well, luckily I had to wait for the backup generator to kick in our office, but so they lost me for about 5 minutes. But and they couldn't really understand it. I was like, well, that's what happens, and that's the challenges we face, which makes it even harder. And then you have, and like you say, from a court perspective, I mean, again, I can only bring a personal experience into this, but my wife and I bought a house, or we were buying a house this year in Cape Town, and the deeds office was shut for forever. So like, and my visa. I mean, obviously, I'm a foreigner, and I go through the visa. I don't think Home Affairs have been in their offices since 2020. So and every single you all know yourself, probably asking for someone for a piece of paper in Home Affairs is it's like, well, you might as well not bother. The post office has been shut. Everything.
Post office too. Wow.
Yeah, well, because my Hong Kong business, my accountant were trying to post our audited accounts, and then they came back to me a day later and emailed me and said, apparently the South African Post Office is shut indefinitely. I said, okay, well, I'll give you the DHL number, but it's fine. But so it does. But this kind of thing eats into business, and I do think that we were saying this the other day that. Again, sorry to umbrella Africa as one, but if there's anything that good can come out of COVID-19, it is what you just mentioned there in terms of the digital transformation, move to getting people onto Zoom, maybe even digital signatures, maybe speed processes up, because then, then Africa really could have a really, really strong and fast, rapid growth future. Which will obviously have a positive effect in every country, we hope. So hopefully there's not such a rush to get back to normal and get back to the office. Hopefully we can factor a lot of that in. And in terms of I'm fascinated with some of the countries that I haven't visited, but we are doing a lot of work at the moment. I mentioned just off air. I mentioned we at Jerem Intelligence are doing some work in Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire at the moment. You're mentioning DRC is obviously an area for you. Is that somewhere that you're seeing quite a lot of growth on the West African side, or West and Central African side? Is that a lot of growth, a lot of focus for the firm?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of growth in the French West African side. Sorry, I almost lost you there. A lot of growth in the French West African side. Also Central Africa. There's a lot of potential. There's untouched businesses there. There's opportunity to grow, and a lot of people are ready to receive. People are ready to receive. People are ready to. They want to grow. I feel like they want to grow and they want to receive. So they're a lot more open to international business. Whereas I would compare to places like South Africa, where we're not. South Africa is a lot more stable, and South Africa wants to grow its own. Like, let's grow up our own, let's do our own. Whereas French West Africa, Central Africa is open to receiving so that they can grow. They want to learn from the international. That's how I feel. That's how I feel.
I think you're right, and I'll speak. I from an educated perspective and someone who's been prepared to move countries, but also from a I feel like I do take a little bit of a helicopter view because I am a foreigner, obviously, so I can see what I think you're right. I think South Africa is in a bit more where, given the checkered past that the country has had, obviously, that it's very much driven towards let's grow our own, and yes, and then you look at countries even on the East African side. You see Ethiopia, obviously, barring some of the political issues they're having at the moment, that they are trying to open the country up to foreign investment. Kenya's obviously doing well. We did a big project a couple of years ago on the Zambian market, specifically on the legal market within Zambia. And the upshot, the conclusion of our report was very much that it's high time that foreign firms who are operating within Zambia should really stay and start putting back into the country rather than just taking. And I think there's, and I'm not saying that that's all foreign firms, obviously not, but I think, and it's certainly not all markets, but that was very interesting for us that there was, in terms of the conclusion, was kind of like, look, if you just committed and you just stuck around for a bit longer, you'd really uplift the economy and you'd really uplift the people's skills. And we were, after that research, we were invited onto the national radio in Lusaka, and the conversation's still going. And I think that's going to happen in French-speaking West Africa and also Central Africa. But there has to be, yes, they want to learn, but also I think there has to be something with the firms that sort of, they have to commit. Yes. They have to move. Like you moved and like I moved, they have to move and they have to commit and they have to put back into the economies, because then they can really make it work for everyone. And I think we are at this wonderful position in terms of as we come out of the pandemic, where where African professionals, African lawyers in particular, as obviously you are one, and our market is and our clients are one, that there's a real chance to really go on a very good growth trajectory, and looking across the region at the opportunities. I mean, one of the things, sorry, I'm sort of carry on here, but one of the things we were talking about the other day is that hopefully post-pandemic, you're going to see a lot of firms, law firms and companies, whatever, within the continent, also looking at their neighbouring countries as opportunities. So it would be nice to see, Botswanan firms open in Namibia, or Namibian firms open in Kenya. It would be really nice to see as it is very common in Europe, and across Asia. So it would be very nice to see that. But I think it's got a great future here, and I think post-pandemic, if we can get that digital transformation right, I think we're in a good spot.
Definitely, I'd love to see that too.
Oh, well, it's going to take people like you and I keep driving it forward, I think. But I think I'm going to let you go, because I know that you're in Ontario. I've taken up a lot of your time already. I really thank you for your time. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better. I know that there's going to be huge interest in this interview, because you really are a trailblazer in many ways, and you are achieving things that I know that there's many tens of thousands of lawyers that contact us that would love to follow. So yes, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy what's left in the sunshine in Ontario.
Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. There's so much to say about our region. There's so much to say about Africa, and there's so much hope as well. And I'm just so excited about the African region, and it's such a privilege to actually be working for this region. Although I'm on the side of the world, I feel so blessed and lucky to be working in the African region. Wouldn't trade it for anything right now.